Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a moment in life when you realize the most dangerous enemy you will ever face is not the one who shouts in your face, but the one who smiles while slowly dismantling your trust. Power is never taken from you in one blow. It is chipped away in small, quiet betrayals you allow to pass. And here's the truth most people never tell you. You will never lose power to someone you refuse to tolerate. But the moment you excuse even the smallest act of manipulation or disrespect, you've already surrendered the battle. If you think betrayal is always obvious, you are wrong. It can live in your own family, circle of friends, or closest partnerships, hidden in 8 behaviors that, if tolerated, will strip you of every ounce of influence, respect, and peace you have. This is not a gentle lesson. This is a brutal guide, because you deserve to know the cost of staying silent. And if you have the courage to watch this until the end, you will not only recognize these behaviors, you will be ready to destroy their power over you forever. Boundaries are not walls of isolation. They are gates of protection. They are the invisible lines that define where you end and where another person begins. Without boundaries, you will find yourself living under the influence of anyone who demands your time, your energy, or your obedience. Boundaries are the foundation of power because they determine how you are treated, how much of yourself you give, and how much of yourself you preserve. A person without boundaries is like a city without walls in ancient times, open to any invader, vulnerable to any attack, and unable to protect what is most valuable inside. You cannot speak of strength or self-respect if you have no limits for others to honor. The truth is, people will test your boundaries, sometimes without realizing it, and other times with deliberate intention. Some will push because they are curious about how far they can go. Others will push because they want to see if you have the courage to stop them. If you give them an inch, they will take a mile. It is not because they are always evil or malicious, but because human nature tends to exploit what is unguarded. When you fail to define your boundaries, you begin to attract those who thrive on control and manipulation. They sense that your silence means permission, that your tolerance means acceptance. You can say you value respect, but if you allow people to speak to you with contempt, you are teaching them that respect is not truly required. You can claim you want honesty, but if you tolerate lies without consequence, you are telling them that truth is optional in their dealings with you. Boundaries must be consistent, or they are not boundaries at all. They are suggestions that no one feels compelled to follow. The strength of your life is not measured by how many people like you, but by how many people know where they stand with you. A person of power does not need to explain their boundaries repeatedly. Their actions make it clear. They do not allow repeated offenses and then wonder why betrayal continues to visit them. They do not hand over their time to people who waste it. They do not give their emotional energy to those who constantly drain it without giving anything back. Boundaries teach people how to interact with you. And every time you reinforce them, you are protecting your dignity, your peace, and your influence. The tragedy is that many people are afraid to set boundaries because they fear losing relationships. They believe that saying no will push people away, not realizing that the wrong people will always leave when they cannot take advantage of you. In truth, boundaries do not push away those who love you. They filter out those who are only there to use you. Anyone who truly respects you will honor your limits, even when it inconveniences them. Those who resist your boundaries reveal their real intentions, and it is better to face that truth early than to discover it after deeper damage has been done. You must understand that your boundaries are not for controlling others. They are for protecting yourself. You cannot force people to treat you with respect, but you can refuse to allow those who don't to remain in your inner circle. You cannot stop someone from lying, but you can stop giving them opportunities to deceive you. This is the essence of power, not domination, but control over who and what is allowed into your life. When you are clear on your boundaries, you are no longer at the mercy of others' moods, agendas, or demands. You move from a place of reaction to a position of command. Boundaries also protect your energy from being scattered in directions that do not serve your purpose. Without them, you say yes to everything and everyone until you are too exhausted to say yes to the things that truly matter. And when you are drained, your mind becomes weaker, your decisions become poorer, and your defenses against betrayal become almost non-existent. Boundaries are not selfish. They are survival. They are not cruelty. They are clarity. They are the silent statement that says, I value my life, my time, and my peace enough to guard them from anything that would harm them. If you want to live in strength, influence, and unshakable peace, you must decide what you will no longer tolerate. Not tomorrow, not after another betrayal, but today. Because the truth is, every act of betrayal in your life began with a boundary you failed to enforce. Power is not gained by accident. It is preserved by intention. And intention begins with drawing the line and refusing to move it, no matter how much someone tries to push you beyond it. Betrayal rarely announces itself with a loud declaration. It comes quietly, like a slow leak in a strong ship. At first, you may not notice anything unusual, just small changes in tone, subtle shifts in behavior, or slight breaches in trust that you brush aside because they seem too minor to confront. But these small cracks, if ignored, can grow into fractures that sink the entire foundation of your relationship, partnership, or alliance. The danger lies not in the grand acts of treachery, but in the subtle signs that prepare the way for them. They are often so gentle, so calculated, that you question your own instincts instead of the person's intentions. This is how betrayal works. It trains you to doubt your perception until you are blind to the threat right in front of you. Recognizing these early signs is not paranoia, it is self-preservation. The people who cause the deepest wounds are rarely strangers. They are those you once trusted, perhaps even loved. Because of this connection, you are more likely to excuse their behavior, to tell yourself that you're overreacting or that they didn't mean it. But in truth, the small compromises you allow today will determine how much damage they can cause tomorrow. Betrayal often begins with small patterns. A comment that undermines you in public, a secret they withhold without reason, or a promise they casually break without apology. These moments may feel harmless, but they are not. They are tests. Each time you overlook them, you are teaching the betrayer how far they can go without consequence. You must learn to pay attention to the little shifts, the change in the way they speak to you, the way they avoid certain questions, the moments they are quick to take credit for your success but silent in your defense when others attack you. Watch how they respond to your boundaries. Are they respectful, or do they find subtle ways to push against them? Do they celebrate your victories, or do they find ways to downplay them? Are they transparent in their actions, or do you often feel you are piecing together the truth from fragments? These are not small matters, they are indicators of loyalty. And loyalty is not negotiable when it comes to trust. The tragedy is that many people see these early signs, but ignore them because the person showing them is someone they want to believe in. They tell themselves that everyone makes mistakes, that maybe the person was just having a bad day. While it is true that no one is perfect, repeated patterns are not mistakes, they are habits. And habits reveal character. You cannot afford to confuse a moment of weakness with a consistent display of who someone truly is. By the time the betrayal is undeniable, the damage is often too deep to undo. The most skilled betrayers know how to disguise their actions. They will smile while creating distance between you and others. They will plant seeds of doubt in your mind about people who actually support you, shifting your focus away from the real threat, them. They will position themselves as your ally while quietly gathering information to use against you when it benefits them. Because their moves are small, you feel petty for noticing. That is part of their strategy, to make you feel guilty for protecting yourself. Recognizing subtle signs does not mean you confront every minor issue with suspicion or hostility. It means you remain aware and refuse to ignore patterns that compromise your peace or safety. Awareness is not about living in fear, it is about living in truth. When you know the truth, You can act from a place of strength instead of being caught off guard. This requires that you trust your instincts, even when others dismiss them. Your intuition is not an overreaction. It is the wisdom of your experience speaking to you. The sooner you recognize these behaviors, the easier it is to prevent them from escalating. If someone continually undermines you, if they twist your words, if they avoid accountability, or conveniently forget promises, these are not harmless flaws. They are signs of a deeper character issue that will eventually reveal itself in greater betrayal. Ignoring the signs will not protect the relationship. It will only accelerate its destruction. In the end, betrayal thrives in the shadows of your silence. The subtle signs you tolerate today will grow into open wounds tomorrow. Choosing to see them for what they are is not cynicism. It is clarity. And clarity, when combined with action, becomes power. If you want to protect your trust, your influence, and your peace, you must train your eyes to see beyond the surface, to read between the lines, and to respond when the first sign appears. Because once betrayal has fully bloomed, it is too late to pretend you never saw the seed being planted. Every time you allow destructive behavior to continue without confronting it, you are making a silent trade. You are exchanging your peace, your influence, and your self-respect for the illusion of stability. It might feel easier in the moment to avoid conflict, to let the offense pass, to tell yourself it's not worth the fight. But what you don't realize is that every act of tolerance toward toxic behavior is a withdrawal from your own emotional and mental bank account. Sooner or later, you will be bankrupt, drained of energy, stripped of confidence, and left wondering how you lost control of your own life. The cost of tolerating toxicity is never small. It creeps in like a slow poison, invisible at first, but devastating over time. That sarcastic remark you let slide, the manipulation you brushed off, the broken promise you excused, all of it sends a message to the other person that their behavior is acceptable. And once they know it is acceptable, they have no reason to stop. People learn how to treat you by watching what you accept. If you accept disrespect, you will be disrespected. If you accept dishonesty, you will be lied to. If you accept betrayal, you will be betrayed. You might think that tolerating certain things is a sign of patience, maturity, or forgiveness. But there is a difference between forgiving someone and giving them permission to hurt you again. Forgiveness is a release for your own heart. It does not mean you leave the door open for the same offense to walk back in. Many confuse endurance with strength, thinking they are noble for carrying the weight of someone else's destructive behavior. But endurance without boundaries is not strength. It's self-sabotage. You are not proving your loyalty. You are proving to the wrong people that you will ignore your own worth to keep them comfortable. Every relationship, whether personal or professional, has unspoken rules, lines that should never be crossed. When you allow those lines to be crossed without consequence, you are teaching others that those rules are flexible, that they can be bent or broken without any real cost. Toxic people thrive in that space because they know they can get away with more than they should. And the more you let them get away with, the more they will take, until there is nothing left to take but the core of who you are. The damage isn't only external, it is internal. Over time, tolerating toxicity changes the way you see yourself. You begin to doubt your worth because the treatment you accept starts to feel normal. You convince yourself that this is just how people are, or that maybe you deserve it. You lose your ability to trust your instincts because you've spent so long suppressing them to avoid uncomfortable confrontations. This is how toxicity takes root. It reshapes your reality so you can no longer tell the difference between healthy and harmful. The truth is, the longer you tolerate destructive behavior, the harder it becomes to break free from it. You start building your life around avoiding triggers, keeping the peace, and managing the moods of others, instead of building it around your own goals, values, and peace of mind. You become a hostage in your own relationships. And every day you stay silent, you are reinforcing the chains. You cannot change a toxic person by tolerating their behavior. You can only enable them. Change happens when you set a clear line and are willing to enforce it, even if it means losing the relationship. Yes, confronting toxicity comes with risk. People may get angry, defensive, or try to turn the blame back on you. But the risk of losing them is nothing compared to the cost of losing yourself. If you want to protect your peace, you must be willing to disrupt it temporarily. You must be willing to have hard conversations, to walk away from those who refuse to respect your boundaries, and to accept that some people will choose their toxic habits over a healthy relationship with you. That is their choice, but you also have a choice. You can choose to preserve your dignity, your influence, and your sanity by refusing to tolerate what is slowly destroying them. Toxicity thrives in silence, but it dies in the face of truth. And the truth is this: every moment you spend tolerating what drains you is a moment stolen from the life you could be living. You can reclaim it, but only if you are willing to pay the short-term price of confrontation for the long-term reward of freedom. Real power does not come from the ability to dominate or control others. It comes from the unshakable decision that no one will have the authority to control you. It is born in the quiet strength of self-respect, a strength that does not need to shout, manipulate, or prove itself. When you understand this, you realize that the foundation of every truly powerful life is the refusal to hand over your mind, your emotions, or your choices to anyone who does not value them. Power is not about how many people obey you. It's about how many people know they cannot violate your boundaries and still have access to you. Self-respect is the engine that drives this kind of power. Without it, you will find yourself constantly seeking approval, bending to please, and compromising your values to keep others comfortable. People who lack self-respect are easy targets for manipulation because they need validation from outside sources to feel secure. Those who carry true power, however, draw their sense of worth from within. They do not need constant affirmation because they already know who they are and what they will and will not tolerate. This inner clarity makes them unshakable in the face of pressure and unmovable in the presence of those who would try to take advantage. The link between power and self-respect becomes clear when you look at how boundaries function. Every boundary you set and enforce is a declaration. I respect myself too much to allow this. When you stand by that declaration, you establish a kind of authority that does not rely on threats or force. People may not always agree with you, but they will learn to respect you because they understand you will not bend to disrespect or betrayal. In time, this kind of consistency builds a reputation that precedes you. People know what to expect, and they know the cost of crossing you. The danger of living without self-respect is that you begin to confuse submission with peace. You may think you're keeping the peace by staying quiet, by letting things slide, by tolerating small betrayals. But in reality, you're surrendering your power piece by piece until there's nothing left to protect you when the bigger battles come. Self-respect demands that you act even when it's uncomfortable, because you know that allowing the wrong behavior to stand today will only create deeper wounds tomorrow. True power is not reactive, it's proactive. It does not wait for betrayal to fully unfold before it responds. It watches for the signs, trusts its instincts, and takes decisive action before the damage becomes irreversible. This requires courage because there will always be people who resent your strength. Those who benefit from your silence will be angered by your voice. Those who have grown comfortable exploiting your kindness will see your boundaries as hostility. But self-respect does not bend under the weight of their opinions. It knows that the cost of pleasing others is far greater than the cost of protecting your own integrity. And here is the truth many refuse to face. Every time you allow someone to cross a boundary without consequence, you are not just giving them permission. You are giving them power. You are teaching them that they have the ability to shape your decisions, influence your emotions, and dictate your reality. The moment you stop enforcing your self-respect, you have already surrendered the power you thought you had. That is why the most powerful people you meet are not the ones who intimidate others into submission, but the ones who quietly live by their values and refuse to compromise them for anyone. This connection between self-respect and power is what makes betrayal so dangerous. Betrayal is not just an attack on your trust. It is an attempt to undermine your sense of worth. If the betrayal succeeds in making you feel unworthy, you will begin to accept less than you deserve. You will rationalize behavior you once knew was unacceptable. And when that happens, you are no longer in control of your own life. You are living in the shadow of someone else's influence. Power returns the moment you reclaim your self-respect. It is not an overnight process. It is a choice made repeatedly, moment by moment, until it becomes your nature. You decide that no matter how much you care about someone, you will not allow them to diminish your dignity. You decide that no matter how valuable the relationship may seem, it will never be worth the price of losing yourself. You decide that peace without self-respect is nothing more than quiet surrender, and you will not live that way. When you make these decisions and live by them, you carry yourself differently. People notice it. They may not understand it, but they feel it. And whether they love you for it or resent you for it, they will know one thing for certain. You are a person who cannot be controlled because your power comes from a place no one can touch: your own unwavering self-respect. One of the most dangerous habits a person can fall into is the constant excusing of harmful behavior. It often starts with good intentions. You tell yourself they didn't mean it. They were having a bad day. They're under stress. They didn't know any better. You want to believe the best in them because you care about them, or because you've invested too much time and trust to simply walk away. But the truth is, every time you justify behavior that hurts you, you're sending a silent message. This is acceptable. You can do this again. And the moment someone knows they can hurt you without consequences, they will, whether consciously or unconsciously. Excusing behavior is the first step toward losing your power because it erases accountability. When you remove accountability, you remove the pressure for change. People do not improve in environments where there is no cost for their actions. Instead, they adapt to the level of tolerance you have shown them, pushing the limits a little more each time to see what they can get away with. What starts as a small compromise, an unkind comment, a broken promise, a manipulative tactic, soon becomes a pattern. And patterns, once established, are difficult to break. The danger is that the longer you excuse bad behavior, the more it starts to feel normal. What once made you uncomfortable becomes familiar. You adapt to the dysfunction, convincing yourself that you're simply keeping the peace or choosing your battles. But in reality, you're training yourself to live with less than you deserve. This erosion of standards happens slowly, so slowly that you often don't notice it until the damage is done. By the time you realize how far things have gone, you may feel trapped, too afraid to confront the person, too entangled to leave, too uncertain of your own worth to demand better. Fear is one of the biggest reasons people excuse bad behavior. Fear of losing the relationship, fear of confrontation, fear of being alone, fear that speaking up will make things worse. But the irony is, every time you avoid addressing harmful behavior to protect the relationship, you are actually weakening it. Healthy relationships are built on honesty, respect, and accountability. If you remove any of those pillars, the relationship will collapse eventually, whether you confront the issue now or years from now. Guilt is another weapon that keeps people in the cycle of excusing. The toxic person might remind you of your own mistakes, implying you have no right to hold them accountable. Or they might play the victim, making you feel heartless for calling out their actions. They twist the truth until you start questioning your own perception. And once you start doubting yourself, you're far more likely to let things slide, convincing yourself that maybe you're overreacting. Misplaced loyalty is equally dangerous. Sometimes you excuse someone's actions because of history. You've known them for years, they've been through a lot with you, or they once did something significant for you. While loyalty can be a beautiful thing, it becomes destructive when it blinds you to repeated patterns of harm. True loyalty does not mean covering for someone's behavior at the expense of your own well-being. It means loving them enough to expect better from them and loving yourself enough to walk away if they refuse to change. You must understand this. Excusing behavior does not protect the relationship. It protects the problem. And the longer the problem is protected, the stronger it becomes. If you want real change, you must be willing to face the discomfort of truth. That means calling out manipulation, refusing to accept broken promises without consequence, and making it clear that disrespect will not be ignored. This doesn't require hostility, it requires clarity and consistency. The moment you stop making excuses, you reclaim control. You draw a line that says, this is where I end, and this is where you cannot cross. It may cost you certain relationships, but those relationships were already costing you more than they were worth. The people who truly care for you will rise to meet your standard. The ones who were only benefiting from your silence will resent you for it. And that's how you know who belongs in your life. In the end, excusing harmful behavior is just a slower form of surrender. It's handing over your power in small pieces until you have nothing left to protect yourself with. If you want to keep your influence, your dignity, and your peace, you must recognize excuses for what they are, a shield for the very thing that is destroying you. And the moment you put down that shield and face the truth, you open the door to a life where respect is not begged for, but naturally given, because you have shown that you will accept nothing less. The most dangerous enemies are rarely the ones who announce themselves loudly. They are the ones who disguise their intentions so well that you welcome them into your life. They do not come with open hostility. They come with charm, flattery, and an appearance of loyalty. But behind that mask, they are gathering information, studying your weaknesses, and waiting for the moment when your guard is down. Betrayal almost never comes from a stranger. It comes from someone you trusted, someone you allowed close enough to wound you where it hurts most. That is why recognizing the subtle signs of hidden betrayal is one of the most critical skills you can develop if you want to protect your power. It often starts with small inconsistencies, stories that don't match, promises that never quite materialize, commitments that are fulfilled just enough to keep your trust, but broken often enough to weaken it. These people know that trust is not lost in one grand betrayal, but in a series of small fractures. Each time you overlook one of these fractures, they learn that you value the relationship enough to absorb the damage, and that knowledge emboldens them. Hidden betrayal thrives in ambiguity. A manipulator rarely says something outright. They imply, they hint, they plant seeds of doubt. They might present themselves as your greatest supporter, while subtly undermining you to others. They might offer advice that seems helpful, but is actually steering you toward decisions that benefit them. They might encourage your dreams while also feeding you quiet discouragement that makes you dependent on their approval. This is not open warfare. It is psychological erosion. One of the clearest signs of hidden betrayal is when someone seems invested in your life, but consistently crosses boundaries without remorse. They might pry into matters you've asked them to stay out of. They might share information you trusted them with, always with a convenient excuse or an apology that sounds sincere enough to make you doubt your anger. The truth is, a person who truly respects you will not repeatedly put themselves in situations where they have to keep apologizing for the same behavior. The danger of hidden betrayal is that it blurs the line between friend and foe, because the person still offers moments of kindness, still shows up when it benefits them to do so. You start to question your instincts. You think, if they were really against me, would they have done that good thing? But betrayal is not erased by good deeds. It is only disguised by them. A thief who occasionally pays for dinner is still a thief. Your responsibility is not to live in paranoia, suspecting everyone of treachery. Your responsibility is to stay alert enough to recognize patterns that threaten your integrity and your goals. When you see the same lines being crossed, the same manipulations being used, the same excuses being given, you are not dealing with an accident. You are dealing with a strategy. Many people ignore these signs because they do not want to face the pain of what they imply. Admitting that someone close to you is capable of betrayal forces you to question the entire history you share with them. It forces you to accept that your trust was misplaced. That is a hard truth to face, but it is far better than the alternative. Waking up one day to find that their hidden betrayal has finally turned into open destruction, and by then, it is too late to contain the damage. Protecting yourself from hidden betrayal means setting boundaries so clear that they leave no room for misinterpretation, and then enforcing them with consistency. It means trusting actions over words, because words are the easiest tool for a betrayer to manipulate. It means noticing when someone's presence in your life always comes with strings attached, when their help always leads to you owing them something, when their loyalty seems to shift depending on who is watching. When you start to recognize the subtle signs of betrayal, you gain an advantage, because you can act before the betrayal becomes catastrophic. You can limit their access, withhold sensitive information, and restructure the relationship so that their ability to harm you is reduced to nothing. You do not have to make a dramatic announcement or wage war. You simply stop providing them with the opportunities they once exploited. The reality is betrayal will always be a risk in life, because trust is a risk. But you can make yourself a far more difficult target by refusing to ignore the signs, no matter how small they seem. Every time you act on those signs, you are sending a clear message. If you intend to harm me, you will have to do it from a distance. And in that distance, you reclaim the space to protect your influence, your relationships, and your future from those who would smile to your face while sharpening the knife behind your back.